having the last presentation before lunch, I will try to make it fast and furious. Now we're going to go back to emergency response, emergency planning and response a little bit. So what we again discussed up to now, the aging and technology use, aging and technology adoption, those will be actually more complex and challenging during an emergency situation. For example, my mother, who is 70 years old with Parkinson's disease, she has a smartphone and she loves Facebook. She's a very active user of Facebook. But I am not sure if she can actually use Facebook, for example, social media, in an emergency situation like a hurricane to, learn more about what is the status and, communicate with, people and so on. So that is one aspect of the problem. And the other aspect is hurricanes are considered rare events, for example, right? So they may hit a region like 30 years back, and then all of a sudden, 30 years later, another hurricane may hit the region. So I was in New Jersey when Sandy hit, and in November we were out of power, heat for like more than 10 days. And I was in, again, Tallahassee after moving to Tallahassee, and I'm like a hurricane magnet, right? So when Hurricane Herman hit Tallahassee, I was there. Basically, it's kind of having all these connector roads, fallen trees, lava trees. They affected all the power lines, overground power lines, the roadway closures, and so on. So again, all these locations were ready for this kind of event. Their plans and policies, unfortunately, do not reflect kind of the latest technologies because they weren't able to adapt to all these new developments. So I'm just going to pass through this very quickly. So we know that, again, the the older population will be increasing more and more in the recent future. And this is a Florida map where we're talking about 65 population counts and percentages. And the reason I'm having percentages is that there are some counties in Florida where we have almost like 50% of the whole population is 65 plus, like Sumter County you see over there. So these are creating even more challenging issues. And we're basically having the baby boomers, joining the 65 plus, club. So it's going to be even more challenging in the near future. So as part of this RCN, Research Coordination Network, we have this Safety and Emergency Trust. And I'm going to talk about hurricanes here a little bit, but we are open to all discussions related to other disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, landslides, and so on. So this is a word cloud that we had from our literature review. As you see that we're talking about nursing homes and assistance for all these older adults. And again, I'm going to basically pass through some of these. Since Katrina, agencies have learned a lot about certain issues like evacuation, certain issues like evacuating nursing homes, sheltering. But after Katrina, we had so many years, and some of the city and state plans and policies weren't adapting to these new technologies that have been developed. So I'm just basically going to remind you of the Tampa tragic incident. If you're not familiar with that, there were some people basically lost their lives because of the HVAC system malfunctioning in a nursing home, and also in, I think in Houston, Texas, people standing in waist deep in water during the hurricane that hit in the last fall. So I'm just going to talk about a little bit hurricanes with this TV reporter trying to be brave. We're going to basically discuss this emergency sheltering and evacuation issues. Irma, as you know, has hit Florida in a very, very different way that nobody has expected. It went all the way to Cuba, and all of a sudden moved north, basically affecting the whole Florida. People were basically trying to evacuate from Miami to Tampa, and 2 days later they were trying to go back to Miami. So there were a lot of issues related to Harvey, Irma, Jose, and Maria lately. Most of them are, again, since our focus is on older adults and people with kind of disadvantages, the main focus here is to basically to improve accessibility for these people through better solutions. And we have, for example, this is a picture that people trying to evacuate a person, an older lady, using actually a boat. where her home is, I guess, inaccessible through roadways. So again, we're trying to we are all develop technological solutions basically is to minimize the adverse impact of these to all public and also the older adults. And if you remember this map, any of you, this is the congestion map all the way from South Florida to Tennessee and South Carolina, all the red over there, I-95. It was congested like this for days. And then not only ourselves, right? So many people have their pets. Many older adults actually rely on their pets for, actually for kind of a survival. And then unfortunately, we have seen during Irma, the pet-friendly shelters were not enough. This was, for example, I think this is going to be changed in the new plans and policies. In Miami, we had two pet-friendly shelters. They were full, and all of a sudden, there were still people waiting outside. So they had to repurpose some of the pet-friendly shelters, some of the regular shelters for pet-friendly purposes. Also, this is for those of you that know the New Orleans Superdome. This was inside the Superdome when after Katrina. So which was used as a shelter. So basically supplying, all these vital items, food, blanket, water, etc., is a huge problem as well. So I'm just gonna basically go over this very quickly. So we're talking about cognitive, mental, emotional, and physical limitations of people. We're talking about the existing infrastructure. We're talking about where people actually live, urban, suburban, rural. And we're talking about obviously disruptions, power outages, roadway closures, and so on. And at the end, whatever basically the solutions are, we want to basically put them in plans and policies for both preparedness and long-term and short-term emergency response. So what we have again is we have looked at different plans that have been used in Miami, in Florida, and other states. And then, especially after the new hurricanes that hit the whole south and northeast area, we needed basically we saw the need to incorporate more technological solutions to these plans. And one of them is I'm going to talk about it later on is using, for example, RFID devices to track people, which is also a very critical issue here. Are you going to be able to basically use that? Are you going to allow people to track you in the shelter? It's another question, so we're going to discuss that too. And I'm going even faster now. So we have all these technologies and cities as Internet of Everything. So we had discussed those yesterday. So we're talking about data-driven technologies. So one thing that I have seen in a recent NSF workshop, somebody was saying in a presentation, it should be data-driven, we shouldn't drive the data. So there was a survey in some state, I forgot. They asked people, hey, to basically develop a new highway, they asked people, do you want to have a new highway? Do you want to use cars and so on? So people basically, majority said 70-75% yes. So when you don't have transit option, when you don't have any other option, obviously everybody will say yes. So basically this was considered as drive the data option. And also, the data is a very critical issue. Most of the public private entities, private utility companies, they will not provide the power outage data with you, with any entity, for obvious reasons. But City of Tallahassee, luckily, they own and operate their own utility system, and they kind of provide us with data. So what we look at is, for example, after Hurricane Hermit, which areas are riskier than others in terms of the power outages, in terms of roadway closures, and who live there. Are there older adults living there? Are there low-income communities there? Other ethnic communities there, and so on. So again, one issue here, I don't know if you're aware of this, the language barrier. For especially South Florida, this was a huge issue even in the last hurricane. So as you see here, one of the sites that actually has to provide information, somehow the translation module wasn't working, and everything was going out in English. And some communities, unfortunately, weren't able to, use this information because they were all Spanish speaking and so on. And I also heard another story after Katrina where there was they evacuated a group of Spanish people to a shelter, and they didn't have anybody that new Spanish as well. So these are, again, things that can be solved, and in daily lives, in our daily lives, speech recognition, all other techniques are solved, but they should be included in the emergency plans too. And information dissemination. Now, we just learned that 46% of older adults, 65 plus adults, they don't have smartphones. So they actually, and we have seen in the recent hurricanes, they rely on television, radio, print medium, even phone calls. They rely on all this other information dissemination tools. And if we're gonna basically let them use smartphones, we have to basically teach them how to use the apps too. Cities have a lot of apps, right? Almost every city has an app, but they should be able to use those apps, and every time, basically, not only like one case. So we talked about connected automated vehicles. I don't want to deal with this right now, but also some people are kind of very pessimistic about this future as well. If you remember the movie Wall-E, right? All robots are everywhere, and basically they're transporting you from one place to another. So some people, in some conferences that I attended, some people are actually concerned that their mobility will be actually limited rather than increasing by these technologies. But these are, again, all open to discussion. We're going to basically listen to all these people. And also artificial intelligence, right? All these sensors, all these cars are using artificial intelligence. And so this is, for example, one of these cars in the road with all these sensors sees this truck on the road, on the intersection. So this is what you see with your eyes, right? And there is a door over there in the middle, and there's a guy, there's an advertisement. And this is what the artificial intelligence sees on the right, right? There's a truck portion. There is basically the sides of the door is poles for the AI. And then AI sees that a human is running towards the AI. So again, these are going to be solved, but these are issues that will affect the whole, not only emergency, but daily transportation operations. Evacuation tracking, this was actually used in the Sandy for the first time. These are like military people kind of using this RFID techniques for most of the time vulnerable people, kids and older adults. This is a huge issue, I think, to give somebody to track you, even if it is in a shelter. I think it's an issue of something that we should discuss again in this community. With that, I'm gonna be concluding. I hope it wasn't that fast. So what again we have seen is, again, we discussed this transit options, multimodal capabilities. These are all welcome in the emergency situations too, even more welcome, because many of these older adults that actually drive very successfully in the daily situations, they may get very nervous. They may get very anxious during an emergency situation, which actually can create all sorts of other problems. Education, yes. Basically, people have to think about the pet-friendly and special needs shelters that focus on pets and specialist people. They have to be better educated on that. We have seen, again, unfortunately, in the recent hurricanes that people did not know where, they knew where the regular shelter was, but they didn't know where the specialist shelter or the pet-friendly shelter was. So again, adjusting the existing strategies and plans. There are some constraints, there are many constraints, right? The human behavior, we basically are all talking about how aging people, older people will react to these technologies and so on. The spatial characteristics in the region. New Jersey was totally different than Florida. Tallahassee is totally different from South Florida. And then the nature of the relationships between private entities, public entities, all that, entities that should help, and the state of critical infrastructure and facilities. And again, being somebody in New Jersey for a long time, I've seen all those potholes everywhere. If somebody from New Jersey is here, they will know. And then I went to Florida where we have all this perfect pavement, perfect asphalt, and so on. So all those roadways that are available during an emergency, during daily, should be used successfully in the emergency situations. So with that, I'm going to be finishing this presentation. This is my record, I think.